this episode of the Business of Inclusion podcast series, we speak with Chad Crago, the Assistant Vice President Human Resources Partner at Manulife Canada. We discuss key insights for successful job seekers, such as resume, interview preparation, how to network on and offline, and tips for getting off to the right foot at your new job. Hello and welcome to the Business of Inclusion podcast. I'm your host today, Jenna Catcher, the Program Coordinator, Employer Partner Relations and Mentor Recruitment for the Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Council, otherwise known as TRIAC. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Chad Crago. Welcome and thank you, Chad.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And as you've already shared some of your expert advice on our YouTube channel, we're delighted to have you back and learn more of your expert advice and insights for us. Would you be able to tell our listeners a bit more about you and your professional background?
I've been working in the human resource industry here in Ontario for about 25 years. I've worked for some of the largest employers in Canada, both on the finance industry as well as the retail industry, which has just been really cool to see how different industries operate and the nuances between them. I'm currently in a role of HR business partner, or what some people call a generalist, but spent a lot of my career in areas like training and development, leadership development, and some change management as well, which has just been really super interesting to see different ways in the HR as to how we drive success of a business through talent.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing more about your background and what you're doing now. And I'm sure with your background being so vast, you have lots of great experience in different businesses as well as different roles, that you're a very well-rounded generalist. So in terms of, for a resume, in terms of a layout and design, are there some common mistakes that candidates should typically avoid on their resumes?
I'd say the one thing I've found in my experience is every recruiter or every hiring manager is a little bit different in what they're looking for. So I hesitate to say mistakes, but some of the things that, I think are really good to keep in mind when it comes to the layout and design is to keep it simple. I have seen some people who maybe go a little too far in trying to catch people's eyes. So they have lots of different colors and many different font sizes or different fonts. They have graphics or pictures. I just find that can be really overwhelming, and it takes away from the content of your resume. In my experience, I would say keep it clear, keep it clean, keep it concise. Really make good use of the white space. It doesn't need to be flashy. It just needs to catch somebody's eye and encourage them to keep reading the content, because the content is what matters. Just on the point of content, though, I've also seen on the flip side where some people, have all the colors and the graphics. I've seen on the opposite end where people think they have to put every thought that they have around their career experience. So they make it, maybe a 5-page resume, or they try to cram it into 2 pages, but they use an 8-size font and they expand the margins to the very edge of the paper, back in the days where we still printed paper anyway. That much content can be really overwhelming to somebody who might be receiving 100 resumes that they need to scan through. So really keep it clean, keep it clear, so that people can focus on why you have the experience to be the successful candidate.
Awesome. Yeah. So clean, clear, and concise. Great, 3 C's to live by for resumes.
It makes it easier, doesn't it?
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's great in terms of resume customization. People often maybe go a little bit overboard with that. But can you speak a bit to what type of customization people should be doing and how important it is to tailor your resume for each job application while keeping it clean, clear, and concise?
Absolutely. Customization is critical in my opinion. Even in recent memory, I can say I've seen resumes come through for a job, and, there's some really interesting experience that the candidate had in the one case I'm thinking of, but it didn't relate to the job that I was recruiting for at the time. And I thought, it felt like just a canned resume. They were trying to get it out and trying to blast it to as many job postings as they could. And it just leaves the person, the recruiter or the hiring manager wondering, okay, well, is this really the job you're most excited about? Or are you just, kind of throwing out as many as you can and hoping you get a hit rate? And we've all been in that position where, we're searching for a job. We're excited to land that next job. And I think that that excitement is best shown when you customize to what the job posting is asking for. So keep in mind, at the end of the day, your resume is really intended to very quickly tell the story that, hey, you're looking for these skills, these capabilities, this experience, and here's very concisely, again, how I have those and I match up. So the more you can do the match between your resume and what the job posting is asking for, the easier you're making it for whoever's reviewing your resume to say, oh my gosh, this is very clearly somebody I should be meeting with. And at the end of the day, that's what your resume is. It's something to entice them to then go ahead and book that interview. The interview is really where you want to be able to sell yourself. So get yourself in the door with a very customized resume that tells that story.
Yes, definitely. That really leads into my next question of the role of story playing in a resume and how candidates can effectively convey their achievements and experience. I know a lot of people also dread the cover letter. So if you have any thoughts about cover letter versus resume as well and how each can be used to storytell, that'd be awesome to hear about.
For sure. Yeah, there's certainly value in storytelling. I think in the resume itself, I would probably not go so far as storytelling. I would keep it really crisp and have clear examples that, wherever possible, include specifically what was your role, specifically what did you accomplish in situation XYZ, and, wherever possible, add some data points. So, did you see an increase in production of 7%, whatever the case may be? Give those facts, and it's the facts that people are going to be looking for in the very quick hit sound bites. Storytelling, then, you can elaborate a little bit more. The cover letter is a great place to do that. And, I agree. Most of us stress a little bit about what to put in there. The way I try to think about the cover letter when I'm creating my own or I'm reading somebody else's is that's where I do want to see what's the career story. And more than anything, I always look for what people are passionate about. You may have done multiple diverse roles in your career and worked for different industries in different countries over the world, whatever the case may be. There's a story there. And we're all human at the end of the day. I want to know what your story is. Are you passionate about whether it's the company I'm recruiting for, whether it's the specific job, whether it's, something in the job posting that really caught your interest? I want to see that connection between what I'm offering in this job and what your passion in your career, your past, and what you hope your future is. So the cover letter is a great way to do that. And then obviously that's going to lead into stories that you prepare as you start thinking about the interview.
Awesome. Yeah. So with keeping our resume clean, clear, concise, and then having those quick hit sound bites and data points, and then elaborating on your story and your passion and, what your kind of trajectory has been over your professional career is really important in that cover letter and resume. And now, based on your advice, we've nailed it and we're in the door. So if we've got an interview, what would you say are the most kind of important steps a candidate should take when preparing for that interview besides that resume and cover letter that we've already beautifully covered off?
Yeah, I'd say I look at it two different ways. And number one, we've touched on already, is really understand the opportunity you're now interviewing for. So understand as much as you can. And this is where you leverage your network. You maybe you do a little bit of research online. What's the company? What industry are they playing in? What are the common challenges maybe that industry is facing, or the opportunities? And, if I think of funneling it down, the industry, the company, and then the team and the job that you're applying for, however you can leverage what's available to you to understand what you're walking into, that will allow you to ask better questions and to customize, the stories that you prepare for the interview so that you're giving the most relevant examples to the people who are interviewing you. So at the end of the day, you might have something in your career, in your past, that you're incredibly proud of. But if you can't clearly connect the dots between what that was and what you had to do to accomplish that thing to how that would be a benefit to this opportunity in this company, then, we're not getting full value out of the conversation. So you really want to connect the dots between what does the company need? What do I offer? And how do those two overlap? That's really what you're looking to do.
great. And I guess in terms of, when candidates are researching the need that the company has and trying to find that overlap with what they offer, is there a way you'd maybe like recommend a candidate to kind of smoothly demonstrate that they've done their research without sounding totally rehearsed?
What I guess I would suggest is, and I have heard exactly what you're alluding to, is, people who have scoured the internet and read every news article on the company, and then, they kind of regurgitate that or repeat that back to me. That's nice that you did the research. That's great. But what I'm looking for is the connections. And so if you can show me you've done your research by making a personal connection back to it or asking a question. So, maybe there's something topical that, I noticed your company just went through a merger and acquisition. I'm curious, how might that impact what this role looks like over the next year or two? That would show me that, you've done your research, but you're actually thinking beyond what you read and repeating it back to me, and you're thinking about the application. Or you're saying, I just saw that merger and acquisition, and I've dealt with that company that you've just acquired, and I'm such a fan. I've had such great experiences with that company. And, it's one more reason why I'm excited to work for you now, is that, I think we're going to get the value out of that acquisition. And obviously I'm picking a very big example in a merger and acquisition. Whatever it is, I would say find something that's topical. And if you can ask a question to show your interest and that you're connecting those dots, I think you're really going to get an engaged conversation when you meet with that interviewer.
Yeah, great point. Especially, I like the examples you had of basically showing that you researched the need, and now you know how you can offer something to that need, or you can provide some insight to that need or new, development that's happening with that company. So that's a really great way to do it. So thank you. So next, we were kind of just wondering more about how someone can leverage their network while searching for a new job or career opportunity.
The network is such a great opportunity. I think what always stands out in my mind whenever I'm thinking about a network is it's got to be authentic, first and foremost. I will, just given my career in my current role, I do get a lot of people that will reach out. I'll call it kind of a cold call on LinkedIn. And it's difficult because I don't know these people. And so if they're asking for, my help with getting into the company, I mean, it's a large global company. I don't always know the role that they're referring to. It puts me as somebody who someone's looking to be networked with in a position where I'm saying, well, I don't really think I'm in a position to help you. And I hate saying no or ignoring the person, but not sure what I can do here. So I find the most authentic networking is when you've actually made a connection with somebody. And so maybe you've been out and you've been attending events where you have similar interests with someone, and you've met over the course of something outside of work, or maybe it's even a professional designation event. Like for me, it would be an HR. So if I was at an HR event for a local chapter and I met somebody, we connected, and then they see something and say, hey, I would love to know more. You've worked for this company. I'd love to pick your brain about this company. What can you tell me about the culture there? What can you tell me about the work that they have coming in the future? That to me is super authentic. It's somebody I've already known and made a connection with, and they're being somewhat specific in how I can help them, which just takes a bit of pressure off of me as that person they're looking for some help from. As much as possible, focusing in who is it, and what's my connection to them, and how can I ask them for something other than just, hey, can you help me get this job? Can you help me give me some insights? Can you share your experience? And people are more often happy to share their experiences rather than feel the pressure of, okay, it's now up to me to help you get that job.
Definitely. And especially in an online sense, when you maybe haven't met the person, it's not like you just met them at your local coffee shop and you have a connection or something. If they're reaching out over LinkedIn, it's more difficult and a bit more onus on you, it feels. So it's good to have, like you're saying, that question that, can you help me with this specific thing? And that's more helpful, I think, for our job seekers and those that are trying to advance in their careers to know how to do that and grow their network while not putting too much on the people that they're trying to network with and potentially scaring them off from being a new connection on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I most people do want to be helpful, but, it can be overwhelming if they don't know how to help. And, really understand where you are in your career. I've had a number of people sent to me through other friends. So I think British call it signposting. So rather than me feeling like I have to do everything, I could signpost. I could direct you to somebody. I don't have experience with what you're looking for, but I do know somebody over here who does. So even recently, I had someone who is teaching part-time at a local college who said they were dealing with a student who was looking to make a career change into HR, and they just wanted to pick my brain about the industry. Great. No problem. I'm happy to share what I can in my personal experience. But that was, that came through not a direct contact, but somebody in my network who I trust and value. And I'm happy to do her a favor and meet with somebody who just, wanted to hear my opinion on HR as a career path for her. That worked really well. That doesn't work for everybody, but that had a lot of that authenticity that I was talking about. And it was specific enough that I was agreeable to do it because it wasn't going to be a lot of pressure for me to help get her a job. Just tell her what I could about the industry.
Right. And kind of those like career information sessions are so impactful, and they don't maybe have that immediate payoff where, it's not like you're getting someone a job immediately. It's they're making a decision for their future career, or you're helping inform them on what to do when that decision does come, which you don't see the immediate effect, but it is very effective. Do you find that on LinkedIn, sorry, this is just actually a genuine question I have for you, you get a lot of people kind of more soliciting you without any asking of information session? Are they asking for a job outright, or are they just kind of a blank connection where you don't really have any idea why they're reaching out to you?
Personally, I get a mix, and I guess there are people where I can see, and the nice thing with LinkedIn is you can see your mutual connections. So when somebody reaches out, I know a lot of people do it, the connections on LinkedIn off their phone now, and it doesn't always provide you the opportunity to put a comment in. So that can be a little difficult. Where people are, I still think if you go onto a laptop, you can add comments. And sometimes I'll find people will put something in there to say, hey, I noticed you were part of this network, or you knew these people, and I thought I'd reach out and make the connection. That just feels more personal. It feels more authentic. And so I'm more likely to spend some time on that. Personally, I think I'm 50-50 to those types where there is some common connection between us. I do get a lot of what I called earlier cold calls, where it's people I've never met before. I can't see any common connections. And I'm just kind of scratching my head because I'm thinking, well, I don't know. What is it? What is it that made you click the button to say that you wanted to connect with me? How could I be helpful to you? And those ones I'm a little more hesitant on because I'm just unclear on what the purpose of the connection is.
Definitely. Yeah, like you said, everyone generally wants to help, but they just don't know exactly how to help. So it's helpful to add the prompt in as to how to help before going into it. And you feel like you maybe bit off more than you can chew, or you don't know exactly what to do. So
exactly.
Awesome. And then I guess just still like on the topic of LinkedIn, what are some strategies for making your LinkedIn profile stand out to recruiters and potential connections? I think we've definitely gone in depth of talking about how to make a good maybe initial message to somebody, of making it clear why you're connecting and if you have a connection to them for some reason. But if you were just trying to build up your profile, what would you recommend to people?
When I think about the profile on LinkedIn, it really is still, so what people post is quite different. I've seen some people whose profile is like a full and detailed resume. And then I've seen others where it's a little bit more of a summary. So it's not a complete duplication. I think what matters most in my experience is that there's enough information there that if a actual human is looking at your portfolio, your profile, that they get a sense of that story. They get enough that they can say, okay, I think legitimately this is somebody I should be looking at for my opportunity. So you do want to have enough detail to show what your background is, what your strengths are, what your accomplishments are. So how much information you have, whether it's the full resume or a summary of your experiences, that it really is personal preference, and everybody's going to be a bit different. I think what really matters, though, is there's enough information there that somebody can logically review your profile and say, okay, this is somebody I should investigate further. This is somebody who clearly has some experiences and accomplishments is aligned to what I'm looking for my role. And I mean, keep in mind, it said earlier that it's, if it's a person who's reviewing this, a lot of the times there's large companies that are using an AI or an algorithm to scan the vastness of LinkedIn, and they're looking for phrases and keywords. So the words do matter. You want to be as current as you can on, what are the phrases, in the technology world, like product owner has been around for a few years now, but I've seen somebody recently who they really were in a product manager, product owner or product manager role, but they were calling it something that was a little more dated. So be as current as you possibly can, like pay attention to what you're reading on LinkedIn and notice where maybe your professional background or your industry is starting to evolve to different language.
Yeah, I feel like the company scanning or screening of resumes has been around for a long time, but maybe not so much the AI and the keywords on your LinkedIn profile. Can you maybe speak a little bit more about how AI is kind of affecting the job hunt for job seekers and maybe how HR is using this new tool?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not directly involved with that on the recruiting side. And I do think a lot of companies are still making sure that they're doing that, I'll call it the right way, because there is a lot of potential risk for bias with AI when it comes to screening candidates. And in our HR industry, we've always been concerned about how do you have unconscious bias in the way we look at resumes. There have been examples of companies that just completely take the names. They have software that would take the names off of a resume to make sure that we're not having any of that unconscious bias. So AI is it's coming quickly, but there's still some things I hope that every company is doing diligence to make sure that they're taking the most ethical approach possible to how they manage. I think what that means for any of us as job seekers is, I don't know that it changes necessarily. You still want to have the facts, you want to have the data, you want to tell your best story of who you are and what you do really, really well. And I think the more authentic we are in our resumes, the more crisply we can tell that story. And then to my prior point, just using some of the common language just shows that, we're up to speed on what's going on in the industry and that we're confident and comfortable in who we are in telling our own career story. I think, whether it's a human or an AI, if you're doing that, it's going to pick up. And it's really about matching your capabilities, your interests to the right opportunity at the end of the day.
Yes, that's a good point. AI and humans kind of pick up on the same things and those keywords.
You hope so, yeah.
I guess so. Yeah, you hope that they are. I'm just curious, I guess, with LinkedIn, as it is social media, though it is a tool for job seekers, some people choose maybe to leave out the About Me section, or they don't include the description of their job, but it's on their resume. So I'm just curious if you're finding that more people should be disclosing more on their LinkedIn about themselves, about their, previous job description or previous job history. Other than just saying, I worked here from this date to this date, I was this role, to actually go more in depth and say what you did and have those quick hit sound bites, like you said, that you generally have in your resume.
Yeah, and that is my personal preference, and my recommendation to friends in my network who would ask me would be, put a little bit more detail in there. So it's great to see, you worked for company X for 10 years and you held these 5 jobs or positions in your time there. Whether you choose to give some key accomplishments or give, just a summary of your accountabilities or one thing that you were particularly proud of, was it a product launch? Was it leading a team that was going through a transformation? Like something to give a sense of, okay, you were there, but you weren't there just doing the day-to-day for 10 years. Chances are there's some things that you were really excited to be involved in and you're really proud of having accomplished. Those accomplishments will tell a lot about the skills and capabilities, the experiences you've had, so that the next potential employer can look and say, oh, you've done that here. I could really use somebody like that over there. So you want to have enough meat on the bone of your profile that somebody or the AI can pick that up and help to connect those dots.
And do you think that maybe resumes or LinkedIn is becoming closer to an equal importance to a resume? Like if someone doesn't have a LinkedIn and they're submitting an application for a job, do you think that's a bit of a red flag potentially?
I don't know about a red flag. And I guess it's hard to say. So in my experience, I've worked for very large employer, like every employer I've worked for has been, 30,000 people globally or bigger. So I'll just, the caveat here is working for large employers, they're going to invest in relationships. So LinkedIn is a free platform for all of us. Companies can pay to have an extra level of search capability. Not every company in every industry is going to lay out that money. So your larger organizations might be more willing to pay that money. But if you're working for a medium-sized company or a smaller company, they might not choose to do that. So I just want to call that out. A lot of companies, LinkedIn's kind of been at the forefront for a long time now, but that's not to say that, there are many employers who are posting there, but they're also posting to Indeed, and they're taking those applications. So LinkedIn isn't the only option. It's one of the bigger ones between LinkedIn and Indeed. Off the top of my head, I'd say those are two of the primary sources that I see most in my experience.
Awesome. Yeah. And I guess maybe red flag was too harsh. Maybe I mean more like a beige flag, or like it makes you think, oh, I wonder why. But lastly here, what can new hires do to ensure a smooth onboarding process and make a positive first impression?
Yeah, I love that question because we put so much energy and enthusiasm into getting the job, and then you show up day one, and sometimes I'm sure you've heard it. We always use the phrase in people that I talk to is drinking from the fire hose. There's so much to learn, which is exciting, but I'm sure it's a little intimidating at the same time. What I've always tried to do, and the advice I give to people in my network, is take the time to listen and learn. It's one thing to want to jump in and prove yourself very, very quickly, but there's so much to learn when you're coming into a new company. It's got a new culture. Maybe there were ways of doing things with your last employer, and they're subtly different or slightly different in this one. You really want to learn how people operate, how decisions get made, and how work gets done. And that's going to take a little bit of time to listen. So you don't have to completely hold back. You certainly are encouraged to speak up, share your ideas and opinions from day one, but really listening and paying attention to the differences between, wherever you were last and this new organization is going to help. So listen and learn. And then I would also say, focus on the relationships is something I've always found helped me be set up for success very quickly in a new company. So people are people everywhere we go. Building those relationships more often than not, the quicker you can build a relationship and earn the trust of the people you're working with, and for you to trust them, that's going to smooth the path to all sorts of things. It's going to help you make decisions more quickly, take action more quickly. And if you do have small moments where you stub your toe, you make small mistakes, we all do, but the trust you've managed to build in your early days is just going to be that much more helpful. When you do have a small error, then people are going to say, oh my gosh, I know this person. That's no problem. We're going to get past this very quickly. So listening and learning, and particularly about the culture and the differences of this culture versus other cultures, and focusing on relationships. Those are two things that come to mind for the really good onboarding.
You have quite a background in development and onboarding and leadership development. So would this be something that you found lots of leaders do as well as they're kind of joining a new company?
Lots of leaders for sure. I would say maybe it's people that, they've been through it. Maybe some of us have done it and seen what, a not so great onboarding looks like. So I don't think it's something that everybody knows to do unless you've, been in a situation where it didn't go well yourself, or, maybe you've talked to a friend where it hasn't gone so well. Sometimes I think we're just so excited in that moment. We don't think a lot about the onboarding. So I don't know that everybody does it, but I think, the deeper you get into your career, the more you realize, oh my gosh, this is really helpful, and this is going to set me up for success.
Definitely. And I love what you said of take time to listen and learn. I think job seekers can get very focused on proving themselves in the initial stages, in the interview, the resume, cover letter, right? And now we've made it in the door, but now's our time to soak in and drink from the fire hose, so to speak. Rather than just proving ourselves. And now we're trying to learn and then give back through that learning.
Well, absolutely. And and the way you said that just made me realize, when I say listen and learn, it's also, making sure that we're not trying too hard too early. And I have seen people in my career who have come in and right from the get-go, they're saying, well, that's not how we did it at my last company. And I don't understand why we're doing that. And, I'm a big believer we have to respectfully challenge when we have a different perception, but the way we challenge, that really says a lot about how we build relationships and earn trust. And if we come in on day one and say, no, that's not right, and I've seen it done better, I mean, I'm being a bit extreme, and hopefully nobody would ever say it that way. But that does a lot to erode trust and to break those relationships. So a little bit more listening before you offer an idea or an opposing thought, that can be really, really helpful. And just being aware of, if you do want to offer a different perspective, how do you position that in a way that doesn't feel like you're judging the company or the people who have been here doing this for years before you got there? You don't want them to feel like that they've been wrong and you've been right. It's more about how do you now win together and change and evolve together.
Exactly. And going back to kind of talking about LinkedIn networking, how you said everyone wants to help, right? So having that kind of the benefit of the doubt and thinking, no one wanted whatever system isn't working well to work poorly. I need to figure out how we got to this system before I start criticizing it, because there's some sort of logic, there's some sort of reason to it before going in with guns a-blazing and saying, well, last time I did it like this, so therefore that must be the best way. That's huge.
That's so well put. I completely agree. And I kind of have a phrase for myself. Sometimes when, something makes no sense to me whatsoever, and I just think like, this is just the silliest mistake I've ever seen, I have to stop and realize there's clearly something I don't know. Like, people don't go around making like incredibly silly mistakes too often. So what is it? What possibly don't I know that would give some explanation to this? I think you're spot on with that.
That's really helpful. I think take time to listen and learn is really great. And I think, especially coming from someone like you in your position where people maybe look to leaders to speak without thinking or speak without actually understanding what's happening around them. And sorry, I misspoke and said they look to leaders to be that way, but sometimes I mean more so that they think a leader may be that way. So it's great to hear from someone like you in a leadership role that is saying, no, look both ways before you cross.
Exactly. Well, and I agree with you. I think I would say hopefully the best leaders want to hear. They want to see you ramp up quickly. They want to see you at your best. They didn't hire you to be mediocre. They want the best version of you. And so for you to be engaging your leader early on to say, hey, I heard this in this meeting today, but it didn't make sense to me. And here's what I've seen before. Like, help me understand what I'm missing here. That's a great start to a relationship, in my opinion, because you're asking for that mentorship and advice. You're showing that you have an interest in learning and understanding, and that you do have an opinion and a perspective to offer that's going to hopefully add some value to the team and the organization.
When you said that, I've been to a few networking events in Toronto for younger women, and a big question comes up about confidence and how to find that mentor, or in the words of another lady at an event, how to find your tribe. So do you have any advice once you get in the door, how to either make that connection with your leader or find those people that are there to support you and help you in your new role as you're drinking from that fire hose?
Such a good question. I think off the top of my head, I would think it comes back. I feel like I'm being repetitive now, but I think so much of what we do, in our careers, it's about listening and showing people that you care and you value what it is they have to offer. So if you're, I find a lot of us feel pressure to have answers to questions, and I say this often to people, especially when they're being promoted, is, you got where you are today because you probably execute really, really well and you have the answer to every question your manager's ever asked you. But you hit a point in your career where having the answers isn't as important as having the right question. And so are you asking the questions that are going to push the team or the company or, whatever the organization industry, are you pushing them forward with your questions by helping people to think differently? And then, so back to your question of how do I connect with people? I think in my experience, it's through those open conversations. And if I'm talking to somebody and I'm asking them questions and I'm hearing their thought process, that's where I find, the things that I value and that I'm excited about. You just told me a story that makes me think you have the same passions that I do. That's a very authentic connection. And then that to me will take you so much deeper than, if I created a program where I match people up in a mentorship. A mentorship just for the sake of mentorship is only going to go so far. But if I know that you and I connect on a human level and we have similar interests and ways of thinking and looking at things, that's a really deep connection that can take you very far.
Definitely right. It goes back to that relationship building and that trust that you want to establish early on in that new role you have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so on the topic of kind of relationship building, could you touch on why an employee would want to join an employee resource group and the benefits that it has for employees and also the benefits it has for the organizations that host them?
Yeah, I think employee resource groups or ERGs is it's just such a great way to connect with like-minded people. So, I think a lot of us look externally, whether it's through our professional backgrounds or, sometimes if we're just coming out of school. This is something now that's within the organization. And I realize, it's mostly the larger organizations that support these types of groups. In the companies that I've worked with, we have so many. I don't even think I can estimate a number, but whatever your passion is above and beyond what you're doing in your day-to-day job, it's an opportunity for you to, fill your cup. You get energized. I always get energized when I do something that's a little bit different and is aligned with my interests, both inside and outside of work. So I would say what's most important is if you choose to join an ERG, there's lots of different ways to do it. You could be in a leadership role where you're helping to come up with, what does the calendar of activities look like for a year? What kind of goals or objectives are we going to have as an employee resource group? Or, maybe you want to start out, if you're just new to the company, maybe you want to volunteer, maybe you want to attend as a member for a little while and get a sense of what your capacity looks like. And I just think it's a great opportunity to show what you're passionate about and meet with other like-minded people. And what a great way to network as well. In a large organization, it's hard to meet people. If you're in one segment or market, meeting people in other segments or markets, it's not always easy to do. But an ERG is a level playing field where you could meet people from any part of the organization and just learn about career opportunities and career paths that you otherwise wouldn't have known existed.
Definitely, yeah. Another step to develop that trust and provide more value for your company, but also speak to your passion. So that's awesome. And yeah, choose wisely and be cautious. I think that's really good advice for most things we take on in life, spreading yourself too thin as well. I had one last question for you, but I'm just curious if there's been a piece of career advice that's really carried you through your career. And I asked that because right before this interview, I shared with Charmaine a piece of advice that's really been helpful for me, which was given to me by like a career advisor at my university. And she said, just look at any interview or any networking opportunity like you're speaking to someone at the bus or like at a very low stakes, low risk environment. And I think I was just saying that to her for this interview now, of kind of viewing it that way as just a conversation and going forward very casually. So I was just curious if you had any advice like that that's helped you.
Yeah, I love yours. I mean, I should be stealing that too. And I think maybe that is my answer is, at the stage, I'm fortunate enough that my career is 25 years in. I've heard a lot of good advice and I've had a lot of great leaders I've had the fortune of working with. So boiling it down to one, that's tough. It's I feel like it's some of the things I've said already, and you've probably picked up on it. I think sometimes we underestimate the value of passion and what we're passionate about. So I always think of, someone showed me a Venn diagram, those three circles that overlap in the middle. And the three circles would be like, what are you good at? What does the company or the industry need more of? And what are you passionate about? And I think it's the passion circle that people often overlook, or they don't put equal importance to it. But if you can find where those three things overlap, that is, to me, that's the sweet spot of where people are going to, they're just going to be so satisfied in their careers. They're going to see opportunities they wouldn't have seen otherwise. And I just always look for that with people that I work with. So I don't know if that's the best advice, but that's one that always I come back to time and time again.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I think when you lead your life through your values and finding also your strengths and what kind of is needed in your environment, you can find a very beautiful sweet spot, as you said, and be very fulfilled in your work. So that's great advice. Thank you for that.
Thanks for yours.
Yeah, my pleasure. That is the end of our questions for you. We really appreciate having you on and you sharing your advice. I've been taking so many notes through this whole interview. I think we all have a lot to kind of reflect on and good points all around. So thank you so much again, and looking forward to doing something in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you again for listening. I'm sure many of us will be sure to update our LinkedIn profiles after this. I know I'll be sending a personalized invite to Chad. We hope you found this podcast helpful, and we are wishing you the very best of luck in your career journey. Please like, follow, share, and subscribe to Triax social media for more job seeker tips and industry insights. If you like this, please take a listen to our other episodes, and be sure to share this with anyone in your network who you think it may be helpful to. Until next time.